last two workshops.
Sorry for that interruption.
That's all right. For the last two workshops, we've talked about that government contracting is inherently complex and cumbersome because it's protecting your taxpayer money, right? So, and it's increasingly wider and more broad, and it just, no one person can really wrap around everything. So I'll be the first to say that I don't know it all. But I think we can always figure out where to find the information, right? There's key resources, so that if we don't know the answer, at least we can research it. And there's a lot of resources in the state, throughout the internet, trustworthy resources that we can find the information. Okay, so this is the usual first opening slide here showing our 4-series workshop that we put together. Today is part 3, and it's going to be fast and furious this week because Thursday we're going to go into part 4. So probably by the end of Thursday, I will be exhausted and you guys will be full of all this information. Once again, this is your series, your event. It's not a lecture. This is a workshop. So we're all here to work together. What are your topics? What's on your mind? And that's really what the top priority to me is getting your questions answered, because I can ramble on all day long about really boring contracting language. And if it doesn't help you, well, then that's 90 minutes you could have been using, to do your craft and do what you're really passionate about. So again, it's not a lecture. It is a conversation. Please use the chat window. I'll get the chat window up. Marla will have it. We'll kind of moderate. And we will bounce around from subject to subject, and we'll go back to old subjects, and we'll just kind of flow with what's on your mind. That way we can get it answered. Please remember to take notes on stuff, because even if you think you're going to remember it, in 91 minutes from now, you will forget everything that's not written down. It just does not stick. It's that kind of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and keep notes on our slides as well, so that at the 92-minute mark, Marla can send these out and you'll have the notes that we took together. But I think you'll take better notes than I will on screen. All right, again, where are we coming from on this? I did this in the government, in the Department of Defense. So I have that perspective of looking at you as a small business, as a vendor. And in the government, I come to the game with a certain perspective, right? I'm looking at it from basically one key angle. Is I'm buying for my organization to keep my mission going, and I've got to meet my results. I retired, became a small business owner. Now I'm in your chair, I'm in your shoes, and now I'm coming at it from that angle, right? Now I'm trying to make some profit, trying to do a good job, trying to grow my business and not get myself in too deep. Right now, I work as I got brought on as the senior contracting officer for a large defense contractor. So now I'm not a small business anymore. We're in kind of the large. Well, we're still considered small business for today's conversation, but we're doing tens and tens of millions of dollars of business. We interact with the government on a different level, right? So I'm going to try to give you perspectives depending on the questions and the subjects from each of those areas. So maybe we can kind of get wrapped around a 360-degree look at all this fun stuff. All right, so here's today's, it's small. I didn't put this together to lecture for 90 minutes. I made it to where we'll talk about a few subjects, bite-sized, and take questions throughout the day and see if we can just wrap it all together into one, positive experience here. So we'll talk about, and on a kind of a basic level, small business certifications. We'll probably go a little bit deeper into the importance of capability statements. And for those of you who've been in the first 2 workshops, that came up every time. A lot of the questions that were asked come back around and land on your capability statement. That's your business card for your business. And then we'll talk about past performance. So this is specific to about where we're at into series 3, and it'll probably get even more in depth in series 4. Past performance is a big question on a lot of people's minds of what is it, when do I need it, how does it work? And there's no real like guidebook out there that says here's how past performance works. So I'll just tell you from experience, from the government side, from the defense contractor side, and how you need to look at it as a small business, because you probably don't have a whole lot of past performance, and you're wondering like, well, if I can't get a contract, how am I going to get past performance? I mean, it's what do I do in a circle? I'll tell you how that works. And the good news is, don't worry, it's okay. We will show you how past performance is not as scary as you think. All right, like I said, fast and furious this week. Thursday, we're going to jump into the last session, and that's where we're getting ready to kind of take some of this information. Hopefully we've done some homework. We've had a little bit of holiday gap there, and we're ready to start putting more pieces together, right? So it's starting to take shape, and then we start looking at, hey, what are the real steps now that I have some foundational education? Where do we go next? All right, and exactly the question on everybody's mind is, what do I do next? And that's really a big mantra for me, is that, again, not to lecture, not just to sit up here and babble, but to figure out really what's the next step you need to do. And for some of you I've met on an individual basis for consulting, and that's where I hit. I know that you need to walk away today with some actionable items that you can do something, not just go, well, hey, there's something I listened to, and file it. I need your notepad to have actionable items so that you can move forward, right? Because broken record, your time is important to you, your time is important to me. That is one of your key resources, and it is so valuable that everything you do in this contracting world can just soak your time, and you'll never even do a single day of your passion, your business, what you love to do. And when that happens, you can imagine that at the end of that long stretch of doing a whole bunch of stuff and it didn't do anything for you, that it becomes even more overwhelming, and it becomes disappointing, and you start to lose your drive, right? So we don't want this cumbersome process to take away your energy. We want to use that time wisely. Okay, so again, it's overwhelming. I know that. Don't fret. We get through every piece every week, and we can make it make sense. What do you do next? We'll figure it out, and you will get something to add to your list. Because this is through the YWCA, I always give a kind of a blurb on the woman-owned business certification, even though today that's what we're talking about, is certifications. If you're a woman-owned business, it's not required to get a contract. You don't have to have the certification. I'm not saying don't get it. Every certification opens up one more door, but please don't have the expectation that you're going to have to work really hard, get the women-owned business certification so you can start in contracting, and then the floodgates are going to open and the government's just going to dump piles of money on you. That's not really what that is. Okay, so just want to make that clear. And hold on, let me hit the chat screen here. Okay, great. We've got some agreement that people got homework from me. That's good. I always like people having homework. All right, so I leave this in there because, again, this is your cheat sheet, and I've always had a cheat sheet. I've got one in front of me now that kind of keeps that key information handy, right? Your cage code, right? You got to get in the SAM, get the SAM done. Got to have that cage code. You're going to use it all the time. The new unique entity identifier, the UEI, you're going to need that number a lot. It's just going to come up. Save yourself some time. Even if it's on your desktop, however you do it, keep a cheat sheet. Your NAICS. Keep yourself reminded to continually work on your NAICS code. And we've talked about that before, where you go through the search, start with the 2-digit, 3-digit, down to 6-digit, and then reverse engineer it, right? You're going to go out and look for opportunities through keyword searches, through however you find it, something that came through an email. Take a look at it, even if you're not going to bid on it, even if it's expired or it's closed. Look at it and see what the government used for a NAICS code and see if that matches. If you go, hey, this is the kind of work I do, how do they list it? They listed 2468. All right. Well, I'm using 2466. I'm on the wrong code, right? I need to look at those other codes by looking at how the government speaks. So that's a big reminder. Your NAICS codes kind of want to be always refreshed. You always want to keep an eye on them, because if the government starts to shift what they're calling things and how they're buying it, you don't want to be left out because you're still in the old pathway. You want to keep current and keep fresh. This is not fire and forget stuff. It's constant, over and over, keeping an eye on these things. And then another big one that I'd like to talk about always is, and I've seen people are during during our individual, everyone's doing really good about grasping where they fit in the market. It's something I was kind of surprised that people wouldn't really know for sure. And I'm not saying everybody's 100%, but whether or not you're going to try to prime contract or subcontract. I had a great session last week, and we talked about this kind of stuff, and learning the prime contractor role just wasn't for her. She was more effective at learning how to become visible to the government, visible to the prime contractors, and support those primes as a sub. And that comes with a real key component it's real simple, is it frees up a lot of time. You do a whole lot more of what you do well, and you're not dealing directly with the government. So for instance, let's break it down into a simple example. We're going to construct a building, and so they're looking for a prime contractor to construct this, say, a dormitory building. Well, the construction contractor is probably not certified in air conditioning, so he's going to bring in the AC guys. He's probably going to bring in a plumber, an electrician that's a subcontractor. He's going to bring in the furniture supplier, the interior people, the painters. There's a whole lot of subcomponents to a contract, and the government's not going to break it out into 10 little contracts. They're going to go ahead and throw it out to one prime. And that prime is totally capable of managing that project and doing the overall general oversight. And they're also able to find their partners, right? So not everybody's a competitor. It's not you against the world. Think about how you can collaborate with the other pieces. And I think a few sessions ago, we talked about yoga, right? Well, it's possible that one contractor is going to get the whole entire fitness program, but just one day a week, they're going to bring in a yoga instructor. And then one day a week, or a couple days a week, they're going to bring in referees for softball games, right? They can't do it all themselves. And you find this is that perspective as you go from a smaller business to a little bit larger, and you get into these bigger contracts, there's a lot of components wrapped and grouped together. We talked about the coffee supplier. Well, I'm trying to help out a coffee supplier, but I told her, you're really probably 99% of your success is going to come into subcontracting, because when the prison industry goes out there, they buy slippers, Bibles, forks, spoons, salt, pepper, tea, coffee, right? No one goes out really and says, we just need to buy coffee. It's always going to be lumped into that sundry items and a larger supply item. You see that in medical supplies. Medical supply contracts have about 300, 400 line items. I don't think there's one supplier that makes all 400 line items, right? Somebody manufactures rubber gloves and somebody manufactures scalpels, right? It's the skill of bringing all those subcontractors together. But what I'm talking about is it's not your role to bring them all together. It's your role to get in there and be one of those subcontractors, right? Some of you are going to bring the forks and some are bringing the coffee, right? And somebody's bringing rubber gloves to the party, but we all get a piece of the party. That's the to this fourth bullet here is kind of identify your market. First of all, whether you fit as a prime or a sub. But then we talk about, and this is kind of geared towards Hawaii. Federal is going to be your most structured, most complex, a little bit more difficult, probably a little bit higher dollar threshold, more paperwork, longer pay times, kind of everything's a little more cumbersome at the federal level. And then you have the state of Hawaii's level, or your state, if you're not from Hawaii. Then we also have, for Hawaii, we have the counties, right? So the 4 counties do their own purchasing. And then one of our big supplier or purchasers here is University of Hawaii and the school systems. They have plenty of money, and UH is kind of across all the islands. They have facilities, they have students, they have requirements. And being that Hawaii is a smaller state, UH really does hold a pretty sizable footprint. So I consider them right along with the counties in the state in the level of purchasing that they're doing. Okay, so with the next 3 bullets, this is on your cheat sheet, kind of some things you want to keep up is your dynamic small business search. You always want to make sure that that's alive and well, because that's how you become visible to the SBA, to contracting officers and the small business specialists, and also to prime contractors. That is a key tool that is very commonly used throughout this industry to create visibility for your company. By not having it, you're not visible. By doing a poor job at that registration, you're probably going to get passed over. Doing an excellent job at that small business search capabilities narrative, people will stop and read what you do, and that just increases your chances of being contacted. And I can tell you from experience as a small business, I put in a great capabilities narrative. I got calls from Oahu, from different military organizations, from Pearl Harbor, DLA. I was getting calls all the time. And I would say probably half of them was stuff that was so big, I couldn't handle the job. So I had to turn it down. But the narrative worked, it made me visible. And then today we'll get into the capabilities narrative. We'll go into that next and talk about your questions with that. I know Marla's had a class on that a few months ago. That's something that we can continually work on.
Yeah, we had a webinar with Hawaii PTAC. So if there's enough of a need, that's certainly something we can repeat. You can also go directly to Hawaii PTAC and they'll help you work through your capability statement.
Definitely. Okay, capabilities narrative we talked about. And there's the search for the capabilities narrative, or the website for the dynamic small business search. Okay. Oh, next we're going into the assistance programs. Any questions so far about anything? Anybody? Any questions? All right. So we'll get you these slides. And if you have your computer up, you can even go there right now and look at the SBA.gov. It's right on the front. It's called Contracting Assistance Programs. So essentially, this is all your certifications that we're talking about. It's ran by the SBA, and these are all of them. So, I've talked to people and said, man, there's hundreds of certifications out there. I don't even know where to start. Well, there's really just that many. Not a whole bunch. And I'll talk through them a little bit here. some of them obviously don't apply to you. You may not be a veteran, so you better know business. Overall, in the big picture, I think it goes back to what we were talking about in the opening with the women-owned small business certification. And I've talked about this in previous workshops. Understand return on investment, right? Some of these certifications require a lot of time, a lot of personal data. I mean, like 5 years of tax returns, cleared checks, bank statements, driver's license copies, a lot of stuff to go through the certification, right? And there's a lot of work in that, and it's fine. Any of these that you want to use is great. It does open up some doors, but look at your return on investment. When we talk about certification, what I'm seeing right now in the market is I guess at the level of small business is kind of where all the agencies are going, right? We do see a few go down a level of refinement down to say woman-owned small business or veteran-owned, but by and far, it's just at the small business level, right? And that's not how it's intended to work. But if you go back to, I think it was the first week, I showed a chart of the goals, right? Remember that achieving these or putting money into these programs, which helps our economy and helps economic growth through the different socioeconomic statuses, they're just a goal, right? It's a goal for the agencies to hit these. And if you remember, a lot of them are only like 5% of their spend. I mean, it used to be like 3.5%, right? So they're very, very small amounts of money. But at the small business level, it's around 48, 50%, on average. Well, if you think about it, if I'm spending half of my money at small businesses, the chances that I actually catch a small business who happens to also be a veteran-owned or a woman-owned is pretty good, right? So a lot of times they don't have to specifically go after a woman-owned small business. They've already hit their goal and they probably exceeded it. They probably doubled their goal just by going through small businesses. It just happens that you end up getting somebody that had multiple certifications. And so that's also important if you're not clear on it, that if I go out small business and you happen to be a woman and a veteran, well, I get all 3 credit in one. It's not just one per contract. I can get them all in one contract. It counts. So the return on investment has to be worth your time and energy for what it does for you. Quite honestly, they're not going to go after it a whole lot. As a large business, you see towards the bottom a hub zone program. The whole Big Island is a hub zone. Throughout parts of the other islands are hub zone. That is a free ticket for the government contracting officer to go straight to that company. No competition, just boom, they can make their life easy. They just put together the paperwork. As long as it's fair and reasonable pricing, we're done. Do they use it? Our company has 0 hub zone awards. They don't use it. And I think a lot of it is because in the government, it's so driven that everything has to be competition based, right? That the only way you can prove that you're doing the taxpayer money right is to compete it. Anything that's direct award kind of gets a bad label that, make sure you've done all your homework to verify that you're not overspending. It's just easier to post it out to 3 or 4 companies, compare your prices and go with it, right? So it's just it's a mentality on the federal side. Also remember that all your set-asides that are on the screen here are typically only used by the federal government. So if you're trying to contract with the County of Honolulu or the University of Hawaii, they probably don't use these programs. So all that certification you did doesn't even count because you're not going for federal work. And so one of the examples I've used before is the veteran-owned small business. I'm a veteran, I have my veteran-owned certification. Right now in the federal government, the only people that are using, in the majority sense, the veteran-owned set aside is the VA, Department of Veterans. Well, I don't sell anything to the VA. I sell it to the Air Force and the Army, right? Well, I spent all that time getting that certification and it was painful, truly painful certification. I had it for 8 years and don't use it. Never used it once because I don't sell to them, right? So thinking about my return on investment, I could have used my time a lot better than going through all of that paperwork and having to deal with that thing, because the fact is I didn't get any return off of it. I never got a veteran-owned set-aside award. So it pays to do the homework and look at the market you're going for, look at the type of contracts you're going for, and it's kind of that reverse engineering, similar to the NAICS code. How is the government procuring what you offer? If all they're doing is small business set-asides over and over and over again, you probably don't really need to spend a lot of time on the certification. So that's kind of I mean, I can go through these a little bit. I'm not 100%, and I'll be honest, I'm always honest with you. I don't know everything about every one of them. Obviously the woman-owned, I don't know much about small disadvantaged business. You know, throughout my entire career, I've never seen that used. I've seen the woman-owned, the veteran-owned, the ADay program. We can talk about that for a little bit. For those who don't know and have heard of it, we just kind of give an overview. It's part of the federal regulations. That's where that gets its name, ADay. It is a preference program. I think right now it lasts up to 9 years. You're in the program, but then you graduate, right? So this is like training wheels, right? They get you you get in the program. They help federal agencies give you direct award, so that you have preference. You don't have to compete as hard when you're starting out. But when you get that award, you don't get it the second time. You get it once. And we won't talk about too much about, there's a little tricky fish in there that they do where they'll change it up a little bit. Companies will get another partner and try to get the awards again. But it's important to understand that, because the people in the ADay program, typically, in my opinion only, they're trying to continually get direct awards. And I'm a proponent of do it the old-fashioned way. Get out there, learn how to compete, be competitive in the market, because that ADay. Go ahead. Okay. The ADay, as you go, you're supposed to increasingly get better and better at competition to where you don't need to be given direct awards anymore. And so you can graduate early, but folks don't like to graduate early because, hey, there may become an opportunity down the road and they can just throw it to me direct and save me some time. I don't know, not my thing. I'll tell you, you're a lot better off if you learn it the old-fashioned way. You learn how to compete, you learn how to break proposals down, you learn how to bid and bid competitively, or break down solicitations and build proposals. Yeah, that's my thing. In my government experience, 90% of our ADay contracts were construction. It just made more sense. Construction money spans over multiple years. It was just a better program for construction. Goldwings that I work for now, we are an ADay. We've had a handful of ADay awards, but not much. But we work hard at being competitive in the market. So we maintain it, but even with the ADay, we don't get a lot of work through that. There was a comment up there about DBE. So DBE is definitely, it's Department of Transportation. thing. It's not part of the, be careful what I say. I don't know 100% whether it's part of the SBA piece, but DBE is you're certified in each individual state. I think it's more of a state Department of Transportation piece. So DBE, there is in any Department of Transportation contract, they usually have a 10% requirement to maintain a DBE in their team that does those contracts. So at Gold Wings, we're also a DBE, and we do a lot of Department of Transportation stuff for Hawaii, but we've also registered in other states, and it's an annual type registration. Some of them, you can just take your state, show it to another state, and they'll go ahead and put you on the list. We see a lot of engineering firms that get transportation contracts, requiring their subcontractors, they're trying to get to their 10%. So if you do work anything in Department of Transportation, it is definitely worth your while to get the DBE. That is a good one for DOT contracts. And okay, Dr. Chow said NHOs under ADay. So NHOs, and this gets a lot more complex. So NHOs can get into the super ADay program, and that's big money. And I get it. A direct award at 300 million, that's pretty awesome. That you don't have to really spend a year or two trying to get a proposal put together for that. So ADay, ADay is there. It's there for a good training. I don't have ADay is used quite a bit, so I don't have a problem with that. The VA uses the veteran zone. Quite honestly, when I think Marla and I did some research on the women-owned small business, the percentages were so low of what was posted out there. It's unfortunate. And at Gold Wings, we're also a woman-owned small business. So, hey, we try to go for that one too. Mentor protege, I read about it. I have not any personal experience with it. Essentially, small business and a larger business joint venture work together on contracts, and it goes right into joint ventures. And if you do have any questions, go ahead and throw it up there real quick. I'll see if I can do my best to clarify. So the 7J Management Technical Assistance Program, brand new, absolutely brand new. So this kid has no experience in that. I read through it, and as far as I'm understanding, I think that's more into the technical world or the small business innovation research and that kind of thing. Hub zone, obviously, historically underutilized business zones. So that would be your physical geographic locations that just generally are lower income, lower industry, lower areas. To be part of the hub zone program, there's a 35% employees have to live in the hub zone. You have to have a primary office in the hub zone. There's a lot of requirements because that's an economic way for the federal government to inject money into those areas that don't have the kind of money and economy that the larger cities do. And maybe somebody in Hawaii can get in the natural resource sales assistance. The only dealings I've had with that was lumber sales, selling trees, and reverse price contracts where the highest bidder wins. So that's about all I have for those. Any questions on general, anything general on the set asides?
Hi, Bill. I have a question. It's Jay.
Hey.
Hey, when you were going over the woman-owned and you said that you and Marla had done some research and it wasn't a lot of listings, did you mean as far as woman-owned business that posts their availability or the opposite way? Like contracts?
There is for what the federal government had set aside for specifically women-owned small business.
Mhm.
So I went out there and I did research and said, okay, I only want to look at contracts that are set aside, or not even contracts, sorry, solicitations that are active for a woman-owned small business on the federal scale. And there just wasn't much, you know. Again, a lot of these teams, they do just small business only, right? They keep it broad because if you think about it too, if you limit it to just a small number of people,
Mhm.
well, what's the quality of the competition you get back, right? If you really want a broad offering from industry, you want to go to the highest level possible that still keeps you in, I guess, the federal good graces, right? So you're not going to go full and open until you hit, say, 100 million, something like that. But other than that, small business tends to get the majority of the set asides. And again, because they end up catching all the other statuses.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And, you know, I think this is a good subject for like individual consulting, that if we sit down and say, okay, I'm looking at one or two of these, let's really get into it and talk about it. That's when we go back and look at what is your offering? What is the opportunities out there? You know, for instance, I see we have a construction company on the line today. Well, maybe ADay is right up your alley, right? So we might really want to consider that. And I know that this all started kind of because of the woman-owned small business classes and things. And there's absolutely, I'm % for it. It just, I'm trying to be realistic with your time, your money, and your energy, that if it's not going to give you a return, I don't care what it is. You know, I'm not against any of these things, but a veteran-owned small business doesn't return me anything, I'm not renewing it. There's no value added, right? So love me or hate me, that's where it is. Okay, capability statements. You can Google this and you will see infinite results. They are forever examples out there. All right. So I guess the biggest thing is, and we've talked about this kind of before, but really you want to have like a one page, right? We're not trying to do a small novel here. So the key is it's one page, and we'll talk about the slide here in a second, that there's certain areas you need to have. The use of it, and I think primarily what we're looking for is the business development specialist. And you know, that's typically at the federal level. But so what happens is a contracting officer says, I have a requirement for a product or a service. And before they move on with their strategy of how they're going to solicit, they have to go to the small business specialist. Small business specialist will go through their files, they'll go to the dynamic search, and they'll say, do you know that there are in our community this handful of companies that can do this work? That I want you to post this out there, but give them a courtesy copy notice that you're going to solicit for these goods, because potentially we can keep some of that money right here in our own community. And, you know, especially for Department of Defense, we really did that a lot because our communities supported us as military members, right? We wanted to try to keep as much money into that community. That's where we live, you know, that's where our kids go to school. We want to support those local businesses as much as we can with our federal dollars. So that small business specialist collects capability statements, and that's kind of their Rolodex of who's in their communities, who's able to support their installations and their areas. You know, and as well as when you give a personal business card, you want to keep those generally kind of simple, right? You don't want a ton of information on a business card. It's not what it's for. So this kind of takes that place as here's my one-page elevator pitch that in a single page at a single glance can answer all your questions about my company. Okay, so it's important to do a quality job on this so that who you're giving it to can quickly in a glance get all the information they need. And I think we discussed it before. One of my tricks of the trade is don't have that paradigm that you only need one capability statement. So you've got to get the one right and the one perfect. Have 10 of them, tailor them, change them every time that you give them to a different specialist or a different contracting office or a different customer. Tailor the crap out of it and make it fit them. Make it fit perfect. When they get it in their hands, they're like, oh, you're the one, right? You're not required to just have one and you've got to make it work for 10 different customers. Make one per customer. Change the pictures, change the past performance on there, change the different NAICS or specialties. And that way you don't have to list all of your NAICS. If you've got 7 NAICS and you need some space, well, just list your top 3 for that client. And then maybe it's a different 3 for a different client. Save yourself some space to put more of the important information. So however you design this, whether you design it in a PowerPoint or a publisher or something, keep kind of a template to where it's not incredibly difficult. You know, don't send this out to some type of marketing firm where you get a PDF back and now you can't edit the thing. Get this thing to where you got some flexibility to constantly go in there, because as you do contracts and as your past performance increases, well, let's update it with recent past performance and recent contracts and things that are, and this is what you'll hear in the next slide. My number one pitch on past performance: recency, relevancy. That's your keynotes for today. Is it needs to be recent and it needs to be relevant. But that applies to your capability statement. Stuff on here, when you hand it to somebody, if it doesn't match what they're required or what they do, you know, if they're the naval shipyard and everything you have on here is for, talks about all kinds of other work somewhere else, you know, it goes in the file. Right? So capability statement, again, Marla said that if there's a need for it, which there's always going to be a need for it, we have resources to help design it. Okay, and Marla's posting some stuff. Keep an eye on the chat. There's some good links up there. Okay, so there's one component. I mean, I grabbed these 2 samples. I like them. They hit the key areas. There's one thing I find funny though. If you look at it, there's a capability statement that has a video in it. I don't think you want to hand somebody a paper or a PDF with a video in it. I don't think that's where we're going with these. All right. So that's kind of a lesson on what not to do. But the one on the left, you see how the areas are very clear, right? The core capabilities, NAICS code, certification, service area, differentiator. And even the one on the right, they're in the black bars there. Super clear. And that's kind of how we did ours. I've seen 100 capability statements. Some of them are easier to read. Don't get carried away with crazy fonts that are hard to read. I mean, if you've ever seen somebody on the side of the road that has a sign they wrote with a Sharpie, you can't read it. You blow right past it, I have no idea what it said. You know, it's that kind of thing that if you can't look at this at a glance, on the one on the left, service areas differentiate, very clear. And the one on the right, that font is pretty thin. I really got to take a minute to look at it. And we all know about how much time we have in our days to do stuff. This is kind of that creative form of selling yourself and your company that clean, clear, easy to read, quick. I can find the information of point of contact. Who are you? What's your phone number? What's your email? What's your cage code? What's your UEI? And your NAICS codes. Because generally, these guys already know that their NAICS codes are in one arena. They're going to look down there. Yep, you got it. Cool. Put this one in the binder. Somebody we're going to contact. And again, what we do with ours, I guess in the differentiators and the core capabilities, those are the areas that we adjust the most. Right. So core capabilities, I'm going to really keep that in an area that's up front, and I'm going to tailor it to whoever I'm going to send this thing to. Right. So then it makes it easier for me that if I know I'm just, some of it is static information, but I know where I'm tailoring this. You know, we throw a couple photos on there, kind of like the one on the right, but we'll switch those photos out. If we're doing airfield lighting, it's all airfields. If we're doing street lighting, you get a whole bunch of pictures of street lights, right? So it kind of makes more sense to the customer. And, you know, if I'm sending it to a military or a DoD organization, I don't put a whole bunch of stuff that we sell to the civilian market. I'm going to show military aircraft or, you know, that kind of thing. Kind of tailor it to it fits their reading. Okay, any capability statement question? Before we get into the past performance.
There's a question. Please remind us what defines recent.
Recent. Okay. I'm trying to remember what I've done in the past. You know, I'd say in the past 24 months, it's kind of what was off the top of my mind. Boy, we used to have something in the government that if it was older than maybe 5 years, it wouldn't meet the grade of recency. You know, so 2 to 3 years, I think, would be that's what I would personally, if I'm doing a proposal, depending on the size of the proposal and what we're doing. If the last time we've done this work was 3 years ago, I don't know, you know, kind of use your judgment of, well, I did this, you know, in 18 years ago. I mean, is your customer going to go, oh yeah, you're qualified. You haven't touched a hammer in 18 years. It's kind of, unless it says in the solicitation specifically a 24-month or fresher, you know, use your common sense judgment. And we'll talk about that here in this next one. All right, past performance. Whole bunch of goodies. All right, so this is one from our company, but understand this is only the top half of the first page. Okay, past performance will run a couple pages. All right. This is what I'm used to seeing as a typical format when we submit past performance. It's kind of always laid out in this format of the blocks. So past performance, it will typically be labeled in your solicitation or in a solicitation that you must provide your most 3 past performances. And, you know, that may solve your recency right there, is you got to take the most recent 3. But what they do is people will actually sit and look at these and read these, and then they will grade your past performance. And they'll grade it as, you know, acceptable, unacceptable, or neutral, right? And neutral is considered positive. It's not considered an attribute, but it's not considered a negative performance. So no past performance is a pass, right? Typically it's pass or fail type thing. So when we talk about you have neutral or no past performance, kind of the misnomer is if you're going to bid on a government contract, you need to have government experience. That is not true. That's horrible. That you would have to have government experience to get your first government contract. I mean, that would suck. So past performance is just really doing what you do. So, hey, I'm going after my first government contract. You may have 20 past performances in what you do that you can put together. It doesn't have to be on a government contract. It can just be doing what you do. And so that's, you know, people are like, well, I want to get my foot in my door, but I have no past performance. I'm like, yes, you do. You've got tons of past. You're telling me you've never done your job before? Your company's never done what it does before? They're like, well, yeah, but we haven't done it for the military. They didn't ask you military past performance. They just said performance. It's okay if it's non-governmental performance when you put these together. And so hopefully that makes everyone feel better that, oh, okay, well, I can submit something in there. Okay, what do we got here? Should we list each contract separately, even if they are the same categories? Each contract is a past performance. So the contract number should be on there. I think it's the third or fourth block on the left. You will have every individual contract as a past performance. And we probably won't, I won't get into it too deep today, but if you've heard of CPARs, I mean, you can Google it, read a little bit. Contractor Performance Assessment System, CPARs, Assessment Risk System. We get into larger contracts. So on our side, where we're into these multi-million-dollar contracts, you get the official report card from the government, and the government will put in your past performance rating into a government system. So maintain your own, but then also as you grow, you'll want to get a copy of your CPARs, right?
Bill, we have a question.
Yeah.
What if your past performance isn't an actual contract, just someone you've worked with several times over the past year?
No, that's okay by me. You know, I mean, if you're going to submit me a proposal for work, and you can at least try to lay it out in the format, right? Fill in as much as you can, and you show me that you have the knowledge to take our past performance format and give me and tell me you're willing to tell me the story of what you've done, and it's recent and it's relevant to what we're on. Well, I'll take it, right? And as long as it's not completely against what we're doing, you know, it'll either get a pass or a neutral, you know. Not a problem. I would, as a government officer, I would take it. Okay, so what you're going to see in here, and the reason I cut this off is because the middle of it was just all repeats of the equipment and things that you're selling. But you want to have a clear description of effort. Now, contract, obviously, statement of works, performance work statements are 40 pages long. You don't put the whole thing in there, right? Kind of do a abstract or a synopsis of your contract, what it was for. Definitely want the contact information, because the government people will contact each other, or they'll contact whoever you list. There is another piece about past performance that you may see. Depends on the level of the contract, but it'll be called a past performance questionnaire. You will receive the blank form, and then you will send it out to your customers that you worked for. They fill out the questionnaire and they send it directly to the government. All right, so there's another method of, other than you providing it, it may be provided by your customers, but you'll be provided the blank form. So if you ever see that, hopefully remember that, oh, I don't just skip it or fill it out myself. You actually need to email copies of that thing out to all of the people that you've worked for, so that they can give you their honest rating. Okay, we can come back to this slide, but The next slide I want to talk about is kind of the important. So like I said, no past performance is neutral. Part of your past performance is not just telling the great work you did, the story, and that you got a contract. It's important to the government that you tell me what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how you fixed it. I don't want to know all the pretty story. I want to know the ugly stuff too. I want to see, because in contracts, really nothing, no contract is always perfect, right? Or all contracts are never perfect, however you want to put it. There's always going to be some kind of issues, and there's just things that come up. It's work. It's the world of business. It is. A couple points here is that it's important that you, as you're working on a contract and you're fixing issues, you're documenting that stuff, right? Hey, we ran into a problem. The government's statement of work didn't make sense. We ordered the wrong part. It got rejected, well, we fixed it. Okay, well, in a year from now, when you submit your past performance, I need you to tell me about that. Something went wrong, and that you were able to adjust on the fly, work on it, coordinate, collaborate, take care of it, and maybe put into place something to where that doesn't happen again on a future contract. So that's kind of a piece that a lot of people miss, is that they don't naturally want to tell the bumps and the bruises along their past contracts, but it's important. I don't ever look down on it. I look at, hey, they are willing to give me a nice, solid, here were the issues, main issues during the thing, not every little issue, main issues, how they mitigated it. Okay. It shows me just a well-rounded understanding of how the business works. Okay. Well, we are at the hour point. Marla, I don't have much more for today on this 3 subjects.
Great.
We can definitely take questions, and we can go back to past subjects. We can open up new subjects. I mean, it's a workshop. I'm here for as long as.
Yeah, we can continue on. If anyone has questions about anything, now's the time to chime in, or we can close a little early and save you some time to do other things, but this is for you. So definitely don't lose the opportunity to share if you'd like, or if you have any other questions or any other resource partners on here who would like to introduce themselves as well.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Dre Childs, and I also work with MBDA, and I'm the business development specialist. And yeah, I was just kind of interested when you were talking about the set-asides. Are there any that you actually do support and think that work? Like, I mean, a lot of them you're kind of like, and you didn't think they were that advantageous, so to speak.
No, I think they're all good in their own right to where they apply, right? To someone who has that specific use for it, I'm all for it. From my government experience, we just hardly ever used them. And it's not they didn't use it. It's not supposed to be that way. And I even saw the state of Hawaii, they just closed on a solicitation to bring in a contractor to help the state of Hawaii develop their socioeconomic use, right? So they've even identified out there that they're not using them to their full potential, right? So they're hiring a small business to come in there and teach the government how to use small business. I don't know why, in it, quite honestly, even so, as a defense contractor, I don't know any better word for it, but it kind of sucks. I mean, I want to use the hub zone all the time. I'm talking to contracting officers going, hey, you want to buy $250,000 worth of stuff from us? Dude, just make it hub zone and let's go. Let's ship. Okay, well, we need some market research. We're going to put it out for bids. I'm like, you know, and what you'll find this, and this is kind of a cool subject, is that when you're doing your job well, and when you're starting to talk to the government, you're helping them design their requirement, right? Because you're the expert. Most of the government isn't the expert. That's the reason they're hiring companies, right? Because the government is increasingly smaller and smaller. They're hiring companies to help them meet their job requirement. Well, when it comes to, like, say, us, runway lighting, well, we do it every day. We study the FAA, know every change, we know every product out there. We know their regulations probably better than they do. And so part of our service in an attempt to help ourselves is help them design their requirement, design their solution. And I think we've talked about this either in the workshop or individually with some of you that, hey, when the government puts something out there and you go, well, I don't offer that, but man, I could still solve that problem probably cheaper and faster. I'll offer it. They just don't know about it. You don't have to turn away from proposing on a requirement. When you can do it better, cheaper, faster, show them, tell them. And what happens is when you start to interact, you've developed this requirement for basically free. You've helped solve their problem. Well, wouldn't you love for them to go, well, hey, I can use a set aside here and give you the contract because you freaking developed the thing for the solution for me, instead of advertising it to the world and then somebody else come in, undercut you, and all the work you did helping to develop the solution, the money goes to someone else, right? So I support them all. I wish the government would support them all. You know, it's like I said, it's not a me thing. I try to shoot straight and give everybody my honest opinion from what I see from industry, what I've seen from government. In the government, we always had goals printed on the wall. I'm telling you, they got the sheet up there. How are we doing with our woman-owned small business? How are we doing with we got them all the time, pretty much anyway. We didn't really have to work at it. It all fell under small business. So, I mean, I'm not, don't take it as legal advice and change your whole business model based on what I'm saying. I'm just giving you the opinion from my perspective to try to help you be more successful with using your time, your energy on something that can give that money back to you. I hope that answered in a long way.
So we have a question.
Yeah.
How hard is it to get an IDIQ contract for product or services?
Well, how hard is a very broad question. No, IDIQ contracts are very common. There's also called a BOA or a BPA, like a blanket purchase agreement. IDIQ, for those who don't know, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. They're used quite a bit. So to explain for those who don't know, IDIQs are kind of like a menu, right? So say the government, you can use them they use them for a million things. They call them term agreements in Hawaii. Say medical supplies. They'll put out a list of those 400 same medical supplies, but they're not necessarily going to buy them all. They just want a menu to order from, right? And they say, all right, we'll give you a 5-year contract. You price all these things out. We will order a minimum of $50,000 on this contract and a maximum of $1 million over 5 years. And then you wait for them to make some orders. And they're a little tricky because you don't really have a forecast of what they're going to order. So if you have an IDIQ for medical supplies and they go, well, we need 10 million boxes of gloves and masks because COVID hit, you're scrambling, right? You're like, oh boy, I wasn't counting on that quantity. And I had them at like $1 a box. Crap, you know, they may order 2 or 3 of one item. There may be 100 items they never even order at all, right? So the IDIQ is a menu kind of driven thing, and you're hoping for the best, that they max it out, they take it all the way to the maximum amount. And you're hoping that they don't let it sit on the shelf and not touch it. I've seen IDIQs where they were very underused. They did all their jobs of awarding it, and it expired, and they maybe had made one order off of it, right? So you may put a lot of time into pricing it, never get any orders, and that may mess with your supply chain and your suppliers who you're trying to get pricing from at a discount so you can be productive, and then you never buy anything from your supplier.
Do you think that a certification for this particular kind of IDIQ is more favorable? Do you think that they're soliciting under set-asides for IDIQs, or there are more open market?
Small business, they won't, no, they probably won't go open market depending on the size. I mean, the IDIQ would follow the same as any purchase order or single service contract, that you would go small business set aside. You know, it depends on what it is of the supplies, you know, and a lot of the examples I gave were actually talking about IDIQs. You know, we talked about the prisons needing the slippers, Bibles, forks, and stuff. That's IDIQs. They list 300 items on there that support prisoners, you know, scullies and toothbrushes and stuff like that. That's all small business. Trucking, shipping contracts. You know, the government uses a ton of trucks to ship all their stuff because the government's not going to move anything. They just use trucking companies. Those are typically IDIQs, and that's called a multiple award IDIQ. So you can have a single award, which is you have it, you have the menu of salt and pepper stuff. Or if you're a trucking company, there may be 20 different companies all on that same contract, and the government will just either rotate, you know, in order, or they'll put it out there. Most likely what I've seen lately with the ones that I've dealt with is they will say, hey, we have a requirement, we've got to ship this much stuff, and they send it to all. Well, okay, so what this was is the one I dealt with lately. It's they do work in Kauai and Maui. There's 5 contractors, and that's it. There's only 5 on the MAC. So with this multiple award contract, the great part of it is one of the 5 is going to get it. So when we talk about, let's wrap back to when you were you're going to be a subcontractor, right? Well, they say to us, hey, we need poles for the streetlights, the long 20-foot poles. Well, all 5 of them come to us and go, we need a price on poles. All right, so we give everybody the same price. I don't care which one of the 5 wins. I'm still getting the pole part of it, right? I'm still going to be the subcontractor because they don't advertise that to anyone else but those 5 primes that are already listed. So, you know, that's just another avenue, another strategy that if you've got that niche of market and you find those IDIQs out there, just be a friend to all 4. The friend of your friend is your enemy. Friend of your enemy is your friend. Yeah, that thing. Okay, what do we got? Oh, we got all kinds
One question, can we watch you hunt for opportunities that do not require any certification or are okay for self-certification that look like good opportunities for a small COG business? I know we're going to go into opportunity research next session, so you let us know.
And that's CPG, sorry.
Oh, where are you at on the list here? Did we answer Brandy's question? I'm not, just hang on to that one. I'll get to that one in a second.
And so thanks, Brandy, for your feedback on
Okay.
small business versus certification.
Yeah, woman on.
Yeah, I just had made a comment to kind of support what Bill was saying, was because we're a woman-owned business, but I actually find more things just if I'm looking for small business jobs. that's just been my experience, and with the research that I've done, it almost didn't matter if I had that or not. But then again, I'm in construction, so I don't know if that makes a difference too. Even though we had the woman-owned business certification, I just have found more, if I'm just looking for small business, more contracts in that area.
All right. Okay, and then the next one after that was insights, walk you through the success of getting started with contracting. Well, overall, I mean, it's these kinds of workshops, but the PTAC is supposed to be the go-to spot for continual free contracting focused consulting. So I hope that yeah, and so it makes sense. Like if you forget the little pieces, I mean, that's what they're there for. You get a dedicated counselor. Okay, and hey gang, PTAC is changing their name to Apex Accelerators. So sorry if I use PTAC or Apex Accelerators. Sometimes I can't remember the second one, but they haven't all changed it yet. But they're doing that because it's the government and it's frustrating and it has to be more difficult than it always is, right? Go figure. So the PTAC actually changed from Defense Logistics Agency to the Office of Small Business Programs. The different government agency adopted that program. And they changed the name. And okay, now I know I'm talking a little out of school here, but this is just in all seriousness to help understand how dynamic this contracting world adjusts and flips around. If you Google PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Center, that's pretty much all you find that pops up is PTACs from all over the country. If you Google Apex Accelerators, there is probably 10,000 businesses that are private businesses named Apex Accelerator. So now it's even more difficult to find a freaking PTAC because they changed their name to one of the most common names in business. Okay, that's where I'm coming from. Let's see. I want to get back to that question you had. For an opportunity, do not require any certification. Well, you know, small business is not a certification, right? I just want to make sure you guys understand that small business is determined by your NAICS code and the small business size standard. And you guys can throw in the chat. Does anybody gray on the whole what's considered a small business? And then we can try to jump into that one and look for an opportunity. Okay, tell me what you mean. Not that, but the certification.
Okay, so is there a small disadvantaged business certification or no? Or you just kind of like if it calls for small business, you just kind of check the box sort of thing?
Okay, so disadvantage is different than just small business. Okay, hang on.
Okay.
Let me get sharing a different screen here. Okay. So here's how it works. On the SBA website, under federal contracting, you have contracting assistance program. And this thing I have listed, unless something changed in the last month or so. So if we go to small disadvantaged business, maybe. There we go. You may register your business as a small disadvantaged business if you meet the following criteria. So you still have to register, right? it sounds like there's big red registration button for disadvantaged business. This is the key one I'm talking about right here is the SBA size standards. That's why it's important when you pick your NAICS code, you look at the size standard associated with it, because that automatically is your criteria for whether or not you're a small business. And it's not anything really big to worry about. And this is actually cool. I'm sure there'll be at least one person in this workshop that's blown away by what's considered a small business. Let's find it. This always, I mean, it always caught me when I was younger in contracting. It's PDF, I guess. All right, let's see. What's somebody throw a NAICS code up there that you have? And we'll go look at your NAICS code. .484 110. All right, that's fine. You guys saw where I found this. It's on the SBA website, so you can look it up. Oops. General freight trucking. Well, if you make less than $34 million a year, you're a small business. What? 34 million? So if I made $33 million in trucking, I'm a small business.
Crazy.
How about that? Oh, say the one up here, what is it? Deep sea transportation? If you have less than 1,500 employees, if you got 1,400 people in your company, you know what? You're a little small business. How about that? There are some monsters out there that are considered small business. So we typically don't have to worry about the small business piece, and you don't have to, you just compare your NAICS code. Because, I mean, you could just drive school buses, and as long as you're under $30 million a year, you're a little business. That's why we really want to dial in your NAICS code to make sure that you're staying under your small business threshold, because I know you're going to make 40 million bucks as soon as you start in. And we make sure we really find the opportunities out there. That's the real key. But you look at these things, 1,000 people, 1,500 people. That's a lot of people. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, and definitely, when they're posting the links up there for your certifications, by all means, there are a lot of people here that are very educated in certifications, very willing to help get you through it. I say go for it. I mean, if you want to get them all, get them all. It will open a door somewhere. It will be a feather somewhere. I only pitch that make sure you're using your time wisely, because we run out of time so fast in this business. And what we talk about on individual consultations that most of you know is that if you're a one-person band doing this work, the amount of time you're doing the passion that you love to do versus the amount of time you're sitting in this office flipping through this stuff starts to dwindle away your passion time pretty quick, right? So make it count, that anything that you're doing. Okay, I'll shut up.
Any other last questions before we sign off today? I did want to mention that Bill is one of our counselors in government contracting. So he's a great resource if you do want to schedule a one-on-one session to kind of talk through the particulars of your business. Because after all of these government contracting workshops, I think you kind of see that it's really the strategy of finding a niche. And Bill focuses mostly on Hawaii businesses. So I put the link to the national PTAC. If you aren't in Hawaii, you should double check with that link and find your state and your local PTAC, because they will do what Bill can do for Hawaii businesses, and that's narrow down, on what your opportunities might be regionally as well. And then as well, help you with your capability statement. Dre Childs is here with the MBDA Hawaii Business Center, and so they often help businesses get certified and achieve contracting. It's their mandate through MBDA, so that's another resource for you. And our sister center. So definitely take advantage of all these resources. They're free. And I think that's all I have to say. I look forward to seeing some of you, to schedule with Bill, and know that I will be in touch with the deck and our video recordings for all of these resources. And let me know how else we can help you, because we're there for you as well. Thank you so much,
I'll see you
everyone.
Thursday. For the
Thank you for the
last
reminder.
set.
Bill, you want to give us a preview on what you'll cover on Thursday?
Oh, no, hold on. It was a list. It's pretty long. Let's see. Hang on, sorry. Let's see, what did we have listed for? Contracting acquisition, journey to contracts, knowledge preparation, opportunity identification, solicitations, proposal, awards, and close it out.
Yeah, so that's one you don't want to miss for Thursday, because now that's the finale of, where are all of these opportunities, and, how can you navigate to them? So join us this Thursday, 11 o'clock. I'll send out a new Zoom link. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.